Hello, I'm Deborah Malone, founder of The Internationalist and host of Internationalist Marketing TV. Today's guests are Seth Cavendish, social media coordinator at Hiki, and Rachel Lowenstein, global head of inclusive innovation at Mindshare. What a pleasure to meet you both. Seth, Rachel, welcome to the show, and we are really looking forward to talking about Hiki and also talking about the award that you recently won for media innovation. So again, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Well, look, why don't we start by talking a little bit about Hiki, because I'm not sure that our audience is that familiar with it. So Seth, why don't you tell us a little bit about why this friendship and dating app is so important for the autistic community? And if you can, give us a little information about Hiki's origins.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that most people are familiar that autism is clinically categorized by social communication challenges, things like literal thinking, preference for sameness, restricted interests. It can make socializing more challenging. Um, but ableism in employment, education, entertainment, and transportation is keeping a lot of us stuck at home. And when we do brave the world and put ourselves out there, a lot of us have trauma and social anxiety from being chronically and constantly misinterpreted, misunderstood, and bullied. And so autistic people already have this rich online culture because that's the main place that's safe for us. So Hiki is the result of a bunch of neurodivergent people coming together and trying to remedy those issues, make it easier for autistic people to find each other. And it's working. Globally, locally, we are seeing people who have lived a couple streets over their whole lives but never met become best friends. They're both speech language pathologists. They start a podcast. We've had a queer Star Trek themed wedding, people moving across the world to be with their partner and forming these rich online friendships. That is so heartwarming to see. I keep thinking that all the time. Every new development, when we put out a new update or we see a story in the feed of a new match, it's just this feeling of, oh my gosh, it's working. So
Oh, that's extraordinary. So how long has it been around, Seth?
we just hit 5 years.
5 years. Okay. All right. And you talked about something that was very interesting when you were just running through some of the details and the need for it, which is so evident. But you said there's a lot of misinformation and mischaracterizations across the autism spectrum. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that with the audience? Just because I'm not sure that everybody's fully aware.
Yeah, absolutely. The field of psychology has a long history of racism and sexism, and as a result, the majority of representation of autistic people has been young white boys, children. And when adults do get representation, we're often not shown as people with dreams and desires or sexualities, social relationships. And I think that that has led to a lot of even in clinicians, like at evaluations as a kid, I didn't get a diagnosis. And regardless of whether or not you have a diagnosis, all of these things are affecting us and keeping us stuck inside. Before I started working on the Autistic Out Loud project and submitted my photos, when I tried to find stock images of autistic people, it was mostly children with a behavior therapist over their shoulder, which is a whole other can of worms. Or kids with Down syndrome, which maybe a 30% are autistic, but it was just not what is representative of who autistic people are. And I think if a lot more industries can commit to keeping this energy going, this diverse representation of neurodivergent people, everyone is going to benefit from it. People are going to understand themselves, find themselves easier, and it's just got such a myriad of benefits. In just the photos that I submitted, I was looking for some research because sometimes on our social media we'll go over some recent research for neurodiversity, new findings, and things like that. I saw this article. I'm gonna get emotional talking about this. Even when practicing for this response, like I tear up. The article was called uh, "Autistic People Have Chronic Health Issues Across the Entire Body." And I was like, okay, that's interesting. I was reading it a little bit and I was like, wait, hold on. I scrolled up to the top and it was a picture of me. And then it was a picture they had used images from the Getty campaign. And I have such a difficult time communicating to doctors and feeling understood by doctors for my chronic health issues across my body. So to see that and see it with a friend, it was me and my friend, someone that I had matched with on Hiki, and said, "Hey, do you want to take a Getty image stock photos with me?" And we were just laughing, and it was just such a vastly different experience from what I've been seeing online or in research articles and things like that. So the representation is improving. This campaign was incredible.
Well, I mean, what an extraordinary story to tell. An absolutely amazing story. Let's back up a little because I know that you're talking a little bit about Getty and so on. Um, Rachel, why don't I turn to you on the agency side because you have a lot to say about how Hiki worked with Getty Images to combat these problematic stereotypes. And that initiative, as Seth had mentioned, is called Autistic Out Loud. Just talk to us about that and how it was trying to reshape the way that media represented this community. Seth's example is extraordinary, but let's hear the background on the campaign. Okay, Rachel.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think Seth did a really fantastic job at setting the groundwork of the pervasive issue of stereotypes about autism in media. And when we first started working together, when, Mindshare through myself and then with working with Hiki, something that really struck me as somebody who is also autistic and also happens to work in media is how pervasive these stereotypes are. If you go onto any visual platform, Google, Pinterest, at the time, Getty Images, and you type in autism, all of those mischaracterizations, stereotypes, misinformation that Seth highlighted, that's what you're going to see. You aren't going to see the richness of the community, the diversity of the autistic community, the vast experiences that we have. You will see very little communities of color. You won't see queer or trans folks, although autistic people are more likely to be queer and or trans. You'll see very little women. As Seth spotlighted, you will usually just see very monolithic representations of autism through young white boys. And that goes back to the very clinical understanding of autism, which candidly is not reflective of how autistic people actually live in the world. And those stereotypes, as Seth spotlighted, have very material effects on autistic folks. I didn't get an autism diagnosis till I was 30 years old because the way that I present as an autistic woman would have been missed throughout my entire life. And when we were thinking about what Hiki could do in culture and how he could combat that as one of the very few brands that is built for the autistic community, being led by neurodivergent folks, autistic folks, they're really well suited to attack this problem where very few brands actually are. So we went to Getty Images and we said, listen, Getty has been a leader in improving disability representation. They launched their disability collection a few years ago. And we approached them and said, listen, this issue of autism stereotypes, it also lives on your platform. It lives on every visual platform. Do y'all want to partner with us and change that? Getty was an incredible partner, jumped in immediately with us, and really was along for the ride. So Autistic Out Loud is a program that we crafted together. That is a series of self-portraits by autistic people to represent themselves in a way that culture has, frankly, very rarely, if ever, actually represented. We very intentionally chose self-portraits because a lot of the way that autism has been represented in media and culture has been through non-autistic voices. And, whether it's with good intentions or ill intentions, they misrepresent the community. So we very intentionally wanted to have autistic people representing themselves through self-portraiture so they could show their experiences, they could show their community, they could show their interests, they could show their passions, they could show their relationships, but all of it came from their own voice. And that, in my opinion, is what makes this program so innovative. We could have worked with professional photographers, but we really wanted to show the experience through our own voices. And the images are commercially available on Getty Images as stock imagery. stock imagery, brand imagery, all of that is so pervasive in culture. And we really wanted to start in a place where brands and businesses could leverage the images and represent autistic folks organically. And the one thing I'll add is that, something that we frequently get questions on is, what type of campaign should I be using these images for? And the answer is any campaign, because autistic people exist in all facets of culture. It doesn't need to be a neurodiversity campaign. If you're a brand that's committed to diversifying your audiences, which candidly all brands should be, because that's the only way you're going to grow as a business, you should think about the neurodivergent community, the autistic community, and Autistic Out Loud is one place to start.
No, that's extraordinary. I do want to talk to both of you about the self-portraits, but I just, you can't help but have questions. When you listen to how beautifully you explain that, but how big is the autistic community? And I know you may not know that offhand, but do you have an idea, like what percent of the population is somewhere on the spectrum, or?
Seth, feel free to correct me on any of this, but I think it's about 1% estimated. I personally think that number is probably a lot higher, and lack of diagnosis and even just lack of insight about yourself probably keeps people unaware about their own needs and experiences. For me, it took 30 years to know I was autistic, for example. The number might be slightly higher, but I think the general guess is about 1% of the population.
I know that the ratios change every year as more information comes out and parents are able to find support for their children, or adults are able to find support for themselves. But I think it went from 1 in 54, 1 in 44. And I think I saw recently for California, one study had come up with 1 in 22.
Wow.
So it's such a broad range of traits. And some people have profiles that would get them labeled as autistic, but all of their traits are subclinical. So it's complicated. It's a really difficult number to pin down, but we are everywhere. That sounds threatening, but
No,
we're everywhere.
not in the least. Not in the least. No, I think the thing that was fascinating to me about it is that it is pervasive, but because it's often misdiagnosed, it the sadness of it is that there's probably more people who could benefit from understanding that they are part of the community. But it's this is how we all progress, right? I mean, it's an extraordinary way to begin.
That's exactly why on Hiki, there's no requirement for someone to have a diagnosis. We're here for people to be able to explore their identity. If they identify with a lot of what they're hearing about the autistic experience, you can come and be around other people like that. And some people are proudly understanding themselves and their challenges without needing to go through the clinical system. There's not much support for adults often when you have the diagnosis anyway, so it's great.
Well, it certainly sounds like this is a major source of support, and it certainly takes away the loneliness or the factor that a lot of the miscommunication aspects. But let's go back to this extraordinary Getty Images story and the self portraits. So how did you encourage people to participate? Just tell me more about it, because it's so fascinating.
Yeah, so Seth and I are both creators outside of our day jobs. So we both wanted to participate immediately when we were co-leading this project together. And because the autistic community is relatively small, but very rich and diverse online, especially, we both immediately, I think, knew which creators we might want to start reaching out to based off of our own networks. And it was really important to us to represent different communities within autism. We wanted to show Black autistic creators. We wanted to show queer autistic creators. We wanted to show creators from other countries. And it was important to us to show the diversity of autism. And again, shatter that stereotype that autism is a very monolithic experience. So we used our own networks to reach out to the creators. We really leaned on Getty Images. I think there's been a lot of challenges with autism's representation in media. We wanted to make sure that the creators knew this was a legitimate program being led by Hiki in partnership with a very reputable institution like Getty Images. And then working obviously very closely with Hiki, led by Seth and other members of the Hiki team, to ensure that we were being inclusive and accessible to our needs. Because working with autistic folks, we do work a little bit differently. Seth, anything that you might add there?
Yeah, when I started working on the campaign, I had just been hired by Hiki. So I was scrambling. How am I going to take these photos? This is such an exciting opportunity. I don't want to just show myself. I want to also show relationships. And it was so quick to find someone on Hiki in Los Angeles that I had not met before the shoot. He was like, "Oh, I love this project. I would love to be a part of this with you." And we're just sitting at tables with stim toys, things like that. And then when I submitted the photos, working on the Hiki team, it was honestly a little bit funny for me to be like, okay, I need to remember this due date and this document, this form to turn this in, and then immediately was able to then be on the Hiki side of things rather than the self-portrait side of things, and reminding other creators in the thing, okay, we're going to need this document. If you have issues, open it this way. And it was just such a great introduction to working with other neurodivergent people, like as a primarily neurodivergent team. The communication flowed so much easier and the photos turned out great. We use them in our social media all the time. And as we can see, they are being used in research. So they've gone very far. It's incredible.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful. And Rachel, it sounds like there was another major initiative because you really launched this at Cannes last year. And I'd be curious to learn a little bit more about not only the reaction, but also how it just affected how you move forward.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, Deborah. So we launched at Cannes in 2023, Cannes Lions, very intentionally because we wanted to change the tides from a business and media perspective, as well as within the community and on social media. And Cannes obviously being like this pinnacle for creativity and business, it felt like the right place to go and to show business leaders the power of neuro inclusion of these beautiful portraits that can be used from a commercial viability perspective, but also we're really breaking the boundaries of what representation in media can look like. So this was launched on a Cannes official stage. I was the official presenter, and after I got off stage, I just had this like horde of people come up, and a lot of them were autistic. And as somebody who is an autistic executive, I rarely actually meet other autistic people in business. And it was this, I think, real watershed moment to understand that there are so many of us in the ad industry. Unfortunately, as I think Seth alluded to in the beginning, there's so much ableism in business, medical fields, et cetera, that a lot of us have just hit ourselves and hit our identities. And it felt very cathartic to meet other autistic people who were so galvanized by this work and felt so inspired and excited to be represented finally. But what was even, from a business perspective, what was very cool was we immediately had brands pledging to use the images. Within a couple of weeks, Google, big shout out to Google, Google pledged to use the images as part of the new project. Full disclosure, I also worked on the new project, but the new project was a initiative that Google created to build events that are neuro-inclusive and accessible to neurodivergent people. And it's a full guide to help events professionals design events to be more accessible to neurodivergent needs. So all of the images in the new project guide are now from Autistic Out Loud. We've also had other brands in conversation with us about using the images. As Seth highlighted, they are being used in research, they're being used in media. I too have frequently come across images of myself on random websites, and I'm like, that's me. That's so cool. And it's incredible. And I think, again, launching at Cannes, it felt like this moment where we can spotlight what creativity can look like when it comes from the community itself, which can be quite rare in the media and ad industry. I think we like to hold things very close to our chest and say, we know what creativity is and we need our creative leads to lead it. But we said, no, we want the community to lead this conversation and show themselves and represent themselves.
Well, I certainly hope that you got a video of not only your presentation at Cannes, but the people coming up to you afterwards, because as you move from still images to video, that might not be a bad one.
100%. Actually, my ADHD work bestie got a whole video of all the people surrounding and talking to me. And it was like me in the middle and then a bunch of other autistic folks around me. And it just felt like this kind of really special moment. But yes, we definitely are starting to think what could happen next with this program. If we want to do video, show other neurodivergent folks in other contexts, really sky's the limit there.
No, I'm sure it is. Let me just ask you something else. While you're talking about campaigns and CAN and so on, just talk a little bit about the media campaign, and also I believe that the United Nations endorsed the program via their Unstereotype Alliance. If you could just share that with us as well.
Yeah, I'll start with the Unstereotype Alliance and UN Women first. So WPP, which is Mindshare is part of the WPP network. They are founding members of the Unstereotype Alliance. I'm a driving member of the alliance and do a ton of work with them to help remove stereotypes from media and advertising, which is the alliance's core mission. And because this program was solely focused on removing stereotypes around the autistic community, the Unstereotype Alliance saw the program and immediately said, this is incredible. This is exactly what this group is intending to do. They're formally part of the United Nations. And we were very proud to say that Sarah Denby, who's the head of the Unstereotype Alliance, immediately gave us a formal quote to use in the press and supported this work formally. We've showcased this work within their network as well, which is made up of dozens of some of the biggest advertisers in the world. So being able to connect it into the Unstereotype Alliance was a real privilege. And it also allowed us to, I think, give even more credibility to the program, having that, official UN Women badge of approval on it.
No, congratulations. That's quite extraordinary. So I guess now the question, and maybe I should direct it to Seth, is where do you go from here?
We have some features coming out in our next update that I'm so proud to have worked on. I think they're going to change the way that people think about themselves and how they introduce themselves to other people and meet new people, but I'm not allowed to tell you about them yet, so I will say this. We are fast approaching 200,000 users worldwide, and I believe that soon we will get to a point where you can see someone in public and maybe they're stimming a little, or they've got a shirt or a sticker of an interest of yours, but it's too loud or you're too shy to introduce yourself. So you can think, okay, well, I'll find them on Hiki later. That is my dream, and we are approaching that every day. We will keep building features and taking community requests to make sure that Hiki is accessible to a wide range of needs. And we're looking to do in-person events too, sensory friendly, in-person, maybe things like speed dating, stuff like that. So there's a lot in store for us. It's just a matter of time. Yeah.
Well, congratulations. It's an extraordinary start. It's a pleasure to speak with you both. You talk about Hiki and you talk about the entire concept of autism with such passion and such knowledge that it's a joy to hear it, and it's also, I think, wonderful for our brand audience to realize that there's now a resource where they can find more. So just delighted to have you on.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, a pleasure, and looking forward to hearing more. The Internationalist focuses on the continual reinvention of marketing by highlighting inspirational marketers around the world and their ideas as they move the industry forward. Internationalist Marketing TV shares these perspectives through interviews and personal stories. Thanks so much for watching. If you find this kind of content helpful, please click like or subscribe. Again, thanks so much.